Welcome, everybody. Couple of minutes of courtesy. We are expecting still few people to arrive. But before we start, I'd like to just welcome you to the final show 2023. This is Design for Government course from Aalto University. And every year we open the doors of our classroom to get inspired by our students' work. But also today is a celebration day. It's a day that we end the course and also to meet with you, the community. We have our partners here from this year. We have alumni also, somewhere I have seen you there. We also have guest lecturers that have been involved these years, and new people that we cannot wait to hear your comments. At the end of the day, this event is to exchange ideas, get inspired, but also to hear your feedback of the work that our students have been doing in very close collaborations with our partners. I'd like to introduce you before to a bit of an intro about the course, but also to the teaching team of this year. My name is Nuria Solsona. I'm the course director of Design for Government, and with me this year we have Natalia Villaman and Sofia Johansson as the tutors of one of the projects, and also Xinyu Zhang, teaching assistant, supporting the course since day one and also putting together this fabulous event. Thank you all. Design for Government, it's a 12-credit, practice-oriented course that it's part of the master's program in creative sustainability, which is a multi-school program combining the different Aalto schools of business, design, and also engineering. And in this course, every year we partner with different ministries, with government. I think we have worked with them all. And it's not that we don't try to repeat, but it depends on what's on the agenda of that year. And the purpose is that we support the Finnish government in transitions, in national level transitions, in supporting policy changes that require a new perspective. Very complex challenges that we support with a design approach. And this is what you will see today. You will see some examples of the type of projects that we believe a new perspective and a design approach can support in these big challenges in policy changes. This year we have had 24 students working in 6 different groups in 2 projects. The first one that you will hear today is the live event services for a dignified old age. This is a project that was commissioned by the Digital and Population Data Services Agency, DVV, and the Ministry of Finance. And the second project is Accessible Travel Chains that was commissioned by the Ministry of Transport and Communications. This is what we have planned for today. A brief introduction by me, just 5 more minutes. And we have divided the event in 2 parts. First, we will hear the first project, the live event services for a dignified old age. 3 project groups for each project, and it will be 15-minute presentation and then followed by 5 minutes Q&A. And then we will end each part, each block, with a stakeholder discussion to hear the feedback from our partners, and also there will be opportunities during the Q&A also for the audience to comment, to give their feedback, exchange thoughts, but also we want you to use the QR code. You will see that at the end of each presentation, there will be a QR code for you to leave your comments online. in case there's no time for more questions or comments, but also just to express your thoughts. We would love to hear from you. A reminder that we will be recording the event. So some of you have already registered to receive the video recording, but if you haven't, no panic. We are going to publish the video recording in the upcoming days on our website, but also the project reports that will be coming up in the following weeks. So on our website, we keep a record of all the projects over the years, so please take a look at those, but also, of course, to access more details about the students' work that will be presented today. The session is aimed to close at 5 minutes to 4, but we welcome you to stay, to network, comment. There will not be time to hear from everybody, but we would love to enable this interaction and to build community and hear about you and get to know you. And so please stay after the event. The projects that will be presented today are an example of applying the design approach. So all the projects, the 6 projects that students will be presenting today, apply this design approach that follows different methods and combines different perspectives. The first part of the course, we have been using the human-centered perspective, which means that we have involved stakeholders, our partners, and that are commissioning the projects, but also other services and organizations involved. Other civil servants, national level or regional level or municipal level, the wider public services, but also other organizations that are involved somewhat in these policy changes. This also involved, for example, a roundtable discussion at the beginning of the course, but also that students conducted user research with user groups, with other organizations. So typically qualitative research that is combined with empathetic methods. In parallel, in this first part of the course, we also applied systems thinking as a parallel analysis. We built a visualization, the different components. We analyzed the different relationships behind a policy change. We analyzed the system behind each of these processes as a parallel perspective to build our research phase, this first part of the course. This informed what we called a set of problems that our students identified. And then in the second part of the course, they selected the most promising problem areas or opportunity areas. And then we question in this second part of the course, how can we change? Where's leverage? We looked back at our data collected from the research. We looked back at the systems analysis and defined a design intervention that will be presented today as their final proposal to achieve the desired change. Some of them have used behavioral insights as a way to steer behaviors in society and in government. The first project that we will introduce next is the live events for a dignified old age, commissioned by DVV and the Ministry of Finance. In this project, we have been working particularly in a program that is happening now, that the government is working on now, led by the Ministry of Finance, that it's called Digitalization and Automation of Live Events and Business Events, specifically looking at creating and developing service packages for specific live events. Live events are big transitions in life that are planned or unplanned, such as having a baby, moving to Finland, or retirement. Retirement is the one that our students have been focused on, as this brief has tasks our students to identify what are the current and future understandings about retirement, what information and services do we need for a dignified old age? Now, please welcome to the stage Digital Inclusion for a Dignified Retirement.
Sorry, where is another microphone? Hi. We are Group 1A. Our proposal topic is Digital Inclusion for a Dignified Retirement, Harmonizing Service Ecosystems. We have 4 team members in 1A, me, Shutong, Jisoo, Elena, and Lilo. So let me begin with a citizen story, Mati's retirement life with digital services. Mati is a citizen, lives in Helsinki. He is 60 years old now. He has worked all his life as a construction worker, so he has tremendous hand skills, but he struggles with computers and other digital things. This hasn't been a problem till now because digitalization is coming to his job, and he feels tired of dealing with such complicated digital tasks, so he decided to retire as soon as possible. Retire soon means he isn't well prepared for it, so he must quickly search and plan his retirement. He used SoMe.fi, Gala, Omavara, banking services, and other services provided by his pension services. But it is really hard for them to log on to different services separately because he doesn't always remember his credentials, and login really takes a lot of time of him. And every service has different interface, so he has some trouble to understand where to find the information he needs on SoMe.fi, and he also needs some help to understand the legal terminology on Vera and Kayla. So when he gets older, he feels that all the services around him are designed for younger people who can see and understand the services better. Like this service range from borrowing books, watching movies, to dealing with his loved ones. So he gradually feels excluded from this digital age and wants to use the digital services as little as possible. This is how Mati's retirement life with digital services like. And actually, the citizen story is a mirror to what we find in our research on retirement service ecosystem. And the citizens, public sectors, private service providers are all within the system. So now let me see the other side of the mirror to see what evidence we have to underpin the key parts of Mati's story.
Thank you, Shutong, for an amazing introduction. From now, I'll be focusing on what was important in Mati's story. So, first key takeaway is that his limited digital literacy constrains the ability for him to use digital services. Here, digital literacy means to find, evaluate, and to communicate information in digital platform. One of our interviewees mentioned that evaluating authenticity of digital information is hard, making us vulnerable to telecommunication scams. Moreover, we have interviewed Chinese migrant seniors, and these reveal that compared to younger generations, older individuals lack intuitive understanding of digital interfaces. We have an example in the middle here that one of our seniors encountering difficulties while attempting to add context in WhatsApp, frequently clicking the wrong button. The second key takeaway is from the Mati story that lack of consistency leads to frustration and disengagement. Here, lack of consistency refers to inconsistent user interface, user experience, and the terminology. Jua, our interviewee, said that every service should have consistent and familiar routines, highlighting the importance of unified user experience. Another interview mentioned that digital devices and how services work changes all the time, highlighting the constant change in digital services. So, this prompted us to investigate what are the challenges of creating a uniformity in service ecosystem. With our collaborators, DVV and VM, we have found two main challenges. First is that service provider wanting to maintain their unique branding and characteristics within their system. Second, creating a uniformity requires a collaborations from multiple sectors. However, in the service ecosystem, the service provider's roles are unclear, creating a communication breakdown or silos. Yeah, so we have seen that the service providers need more understanding of the retirees' needs and abilities. Also, cross-organizational collaborations is important to enhance the availability. After our interviews, we focus on defining, then, what is the dignified old age? We have concluded that service availability and the user ability are the two key elements to create a dignified old age. Through numerous meetings with our stakeholders and our collaborators, we have also identified that these two concepts are intertwined, meaning that enhancement in one will create a better to another. So, then how do we create the dignified old life? Now Elena will introduce our proposed concept.
So, yes, our proposal is a model that is based on cross-organizational meetings. And the aim for this is to getting to know, interact, and align with all the various stakeholders that will influence and are influencing the service ecosystem of retirement. Those stakeholders can be found in public, private, third sector, and civil servant organization. We want also to highlight that this model is based and take inspiration from another important project that we studied, that is the death of a loved one. And this is because we wanted to create something that might be implemented in an actual way of practice. Oops. But which are the main takeaways from our proposal? For sure, our guidelines. Our guidelines aims to, well, foster the discussion during these cross-organizational meetings and then guide the decision moments. And those decision moments are the base for then the individual tasks that each organization needs to address individually to then have an harmonized ecosystem. But we also know that just one meeting is not enough to have an harmonized ecosystem. So what we propose is an iterative model that step by step, every stakeholder can keep track of the successes, the failures, and the obstacles that will appear during the path to achieve the goal. But how can we roll the ball in the first direction at first? So, and in the first meeting, it's important that the focus will be on standardization, especially on enhancing the service availability and the ability to ensure a dignified retirement. For this, we develop a tool that is divided in 3 simple steps that are sharing knowledge, harmonizing practices, and decisions. And in each of those steps, we highlight and we address the 4 standardization topics that are standardizing service development, standardizing user experience and user interfaces, standardizing language and terminology, and standardized service delivery. So getting to know more in the details of our tool, we see that the visualization is through a table in which the first row highlights the first topics that I just mentioned, and the first column has the questions that will guide the discussion. So each stakeholder will need to answer to each of those questions, and those are designed in a way to actually ask and share which are the methodologies in place right now in the ecosystem. So how have you considered elderly people in service development, for example? And in this way, each stakeholder will share their practices, and once this sharing of knowledge is done, it's time to harmonizing them. So we see some changes in the second table for the second step that are, first of all, in the type of questions. So it's not anymore how have you, but how should we consider elderly people in service development for service development from now on. And this is because we want to highlight and foster the collaboration between stakeholders. And then the second main change is the addition of the blue column, in which we want to foster the thinking on how those practices are actually enhancing the availability of services and the ability of people, that are actually the two concepts that Chizu just mentioned. So once the harmonizing is done, it's time for decision. And it's clear, and it's very important that that clear roles will be assigned to each stakeholder, and then what stakeholders need to do in their own organization to then have a unified ecosystem. So then we arrive to the second ball of the model, in which each stakeholder in their organization will optimize their services to meet the decisions that are done in the cross-organizational meetings. Once again, we want to remember that to achieve the goal, it's essential that the stakeholders will be engaged through the whole process. So this was our proposal, and now Hiro will recap on who should be the owner of this model and why it's important to address those topics.
Thank you, Elena. So a bit of summary of what we just said, what you just saw. So we propose that DVV facilitates and guides this kind of a design process that aims at harmonizing and standardizing the life event-based service offering when a person in Finland retires. DVV should establish their role as one who creates guidelines and standards for the digital service ecosystem. If this approach is found to be effective and provides good results, it obviously can be applied for other service ecosystems too, possibly also the private sector services. We see that DVV, in addition to its core functions, already has proven collaborative and facilitation abilities in designing the digital services. So the benefits from harmonizing and standardizing the public digital services, we see that they are obvious for both the service providers and the end users. For the service providers, we expect that the key benefit be that they can work more effectively and also see how the improved work process brings direct benefits for the clients, the people of Finland. And our key persona, Matti here, well, he obviously can enjoy his life as a happy pensioner, knowing that whenever he needs a service, it's designed for him. So that's all. Thank you for your attention. We have been it's been a very inspiring and even exciting and very kind of a process of much learning. So thanks for that to DVV and VM.
Thank you, Tim. Please stay. We have now 5 minutes for questions from the audience. We have our colleague Chris somewhere behind with a microphone. There he is. Please come forward, Chris, in case we need to move the microphone around. We also have the QR codes. Please use your phone, scan the QR code, we'd love to hear your comments. You can leave your comments on the chat. Questions, comments from the audience? Yes, we have a question from Taneli Heinonen.
Yes, thank you. I realized I need to comment because I happen to represent one of the private companies that you listed there, so working for a bank. And a question on relation to regulation that we already have in place regarding accessibility of digital services. How do you see this sort of complementing or adding to that, and what's the relation between our proposal and the existing regulation?
So we know that the Finnish government is already taking in consideration those problems, and there are already legislations on accessibility, for example, for websites and online services. What we wanted to add with our proposal, it's maybe the engagement between the whole ecosystem and harmonizing how those guidelines are usually addressed. So a lot of times for what we just saw, the problems is not that the things are not done, but how they have been made. If in the future we want a Matti that is free from this heterogeneity, let's call it in this way, then we think that it's important to harmonize in a more holistic way those topics.
I can add a small bit to it. Compared to legislation, I think our model encompasses more of opinion of you being the one who creates the standard. So rather than legislation telling what to do and what to not do, you create together this standardization that can be beneficial for you too. Yes.
Does this answer your question, Taneli? Yeah? Are you excited? We have time for one more question or comment from the audience. Also, if our partners want to voice. Yes, Ed too. Yes. Microphone. Oh, we have a question there? Okay.
It was just a quick one. Hi.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Just wondering sort of what's the percentage of growing elderly people in that space who are needing to adjust to digitization, such that knowing that if that starts to become a more majority of people in the long run, that makes it a more bigger demand. Considering I know some elderly people have been having challenges with certain apps updating when they don't want them to. So I was just wondering if you have any statistics on sort of the growing percentage of people like Matti in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I can take that. We did quite a lot of hands-on. I don't remember we seeing like exact numbers of what the growth will be, but like one key thing is that when thinking about old age, there are still kind of majority of people are still like somewhat capable of operating in the digital world, but there's this most marginalized group, possibly people over 80 and thereon, when the kind of irreversible aging ultimately causes that you sort of lose your capability, and those are also people who are not heard in designing the services, and that's something that we identified pretty early on, and it's also a very like a sensitive political social matter that we should really consider the most marginalized old people, and not sort of pool them into one group of old people, but take them as individuals and really hear them.
Thank you. We had one last question. First to the front. Thank you, Chris. From ETU, representing one of the partners, DVB.
Yeah, just not much of a question, but more like a comment or just like a compliment. Like only like 2 weeks ago, we had a very good session, and like trying to figure out some of the like the details in your system, and I think you've done a very good job on building in that on top of that last session, and I think the whole project looks really great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please welcome to the stage Group C, Nudging Retirement, a Lifelong Journey.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are very happy to be there today in front of you to present our work and our solution of nudging retirement. So before we start, I will quickly present the team. We have in the audience Emilia, and here is Mirta. They are both studying collaborative and industrial design. Martin is there as well, studying creative sustainability. And my name is Tom. I'm studying business in Aalto as well. So today's topic is retirement, and this is probably the way you see it, or at least this is the way we saw it when we started working on the topic. Retirement was something like a rupture in life, with a phase before and an after, and most of the time we consider the pre-retirement phase much more appealing than the one coming after. But as we got to know the topic, we challenged this understanding. And to do so, we started by mapping the retirement system, which means we identified the different stakeholders which are involved during the retirement phase, and also identifying the different relationships between them. And we started with the pension system because this is the first one which came to our mind, and as you can see, there are already a lot of stakeholders involved with many different connections going from money, data flows, knowledge, but this is actually only a part of the retirement system as a whole, because another important topic is the care system, with topics such as healthcare or the social system, and once again, we have many stakeholders involved. The idea here is not to get into details, but to show you that the system as a whole is quite complex, and it was the case for us, but it's also very probably the case for Finnish citizens. And once we had this broad picture of the retirement system, we needed to talk with experts to get into more details and get some insights. And so that's what we did. And a first important takeaway from our discussion with experts is that there is a lot of diversity in the way people retire and in the life they want to have afterwards. We have this striking quote saying, "I don't want to be categorized as one of these elderly people. I want to be the subject of my life." And at this point, we understood that having the choice when you get old is very, very important to be dignified and to have the life you want. Another important takeaway from the interviews we conducted is about preparation. As you can read, preparation for old age is postponed into the future. The older the person, the fewer the options, for example, in terms of housing. So we understood that there is a lot to prepare for retirement, but unfortunately nowadays people prepare too late. And this is why, as time goes on, they have fewer options, and they need to take a lot of decisions in a small amount of time with a limited range of options. So we understood that retirement is not a single point in life, but more a lifelong process. And then comes the question, what holds us from preparing the last 30 years of our life?
At the same time, is it working? Yeah. At the same time as we were discussing with experts both from the private and public sectors, we also conducted a desk research study which will try to summarize the main findings that emerge. We used storytelling during our co-creation session with our partners in order to understand what the life of someone retiring might be like. And we also came across a paper that described the life the stages people who want to quit alcohol addiction go through. And it helped us understand that the self-reflection process is very important, and that after defining a main goal, setting sub-goals helps and show the way to reach a more ambitious goals. In our context of retirement, this means that there is this self-reflection process that needs to happen at some point. For example, people need to think about what a meaningful retirement might look like for them, because it can change from person to another person, or what their life to look like when they would not be longer working. And then the next steps is to define the sub-goals. Can you just go back? Yeah, thank you. To define the sub-goals in order to find this, show the way, because it's way more inspiring for people to be able to define the goals, define the sub-goals, and then have a clear view and just building agency through this process. Then we highlight another important fact. We can read in a paper written by the Association of Social Gerontologists, it seems that nowadays mass culture stopped considering the process of aging and old age as a natural continuity of life. And this is quite a striking quote that shows that today growing old is perceived as something negative in our modern societies. And we came across the same statement in the literature review, in the expert interviews, and our desk research. Now that we have all this data, we need to analyze this to make sense out of it. And to do so, we're using a mental model. So it's a model designed by Donora Meadows, which will help us to make sense of the system. And it helps us also understand what's hidden behind or beneath a simple event. We have realized that the problem actually stems from the mental models that are deeply rooted and embedded in our unconscious collective, in our collective unconscious. And the fact that we are perceiving aging as something negative. And these mental models have an impact on people's understanding of the Finnish retirement system as a whole. The system is perceived as complex with no possibility of taking concrete actions and towards a goal which seems so far away. As a consequence, we are identifying a recurrent pattern. Finnish citizens are inclined to postpone preparing for retirement. And as a result of delaying planification and decision-making, the number of options available to them decreases as they move toward retirement. Our scope is not to change the system, but rather accepting it in its multiplicity, in its entirety, multiplicity, and in complexity. So we are deciding to intervene at the pattern level in order to show Finns the relevance of an earlier preparation. Now that we have analyzed the data, we can start to design the intervention. This is a very schematic representation of what a life of someone putting off preparation might look like, because they have to take various numbers of number of decisions in a hurry, and this can have a drastic impact on the quality or on retirement, but also on their well-being during the transitional period. We propose to change this by smoothing the whole process and restructuring the information across the life of a person, enabling them to spread their retirement preparation over different key moments that correspond to some moments of reflection and action spread throughout someone's life or career. We are planning to do this by using a concept derived from behavioral economics, which is called nudging. And nudging means that we push and encourage people to do something that they would otherwise not do. This is a way of sparking reflective action. The point here is to structure the complex choices by spreading them over a longer period of time. We are not only nudging once or twice, but multiple times, indeed 4 times across someone's life, in order to make sure that everyone gets triggered at some point by the necessity of thinking early about preparing for retirement.
Let me show you how our proposal looks in detail. We are starting with the first notch, which is the yearly pension report that everyone receives, and this can trigger a lot of uncertainty, and we are coming in with a notch around the theme of preparing for your financial situation. Yes, exactly. Here the owner is the pension insurance. The second one is when you are registering your marriage, there is a request form, and that could be an opportunity, for example, to discuss or to bring up care will. So around documentation. Yes. And the third one is an intergenerational one. So when the parents or of someone are getting older, when they retire, after 2 to 5 years afterwards, we are notifying them to maybe start a discussion with their children. So to talk about their experiences of retiring. This is to spark the reflection about what I want, how do I want to get old. And the last one is the regular health checkup that is taking place at Kela, and there we thought we could nudge them to think about their living situation and what, for example, how you can look at your apartment from a health perspective. But let me explain this using an example. This is Peter. He's 30 years old. This is Finnish face. His friendly Finnish face. He has no interest in retirement. Let's change that. Yeah, his employer is sending, his employer's pension insurance is sending him his pension report, his yearly pension report. And on it written is the years he has left in working and the amount of pension that he will receive when he will retire. This creates a lot of anxiety. What should he do? So then he finds this helping note, and that makes him think. But then he doesn't care. He keeps and forgets about it. 2 years later, Peter is falling in love. And he wants to get married. As we all know, this also involves a lot of paperwork. One of them is the DVV form called Examination of Impediments to Marriage. And this is where we think we could come and, so he is registering him and his partner, and luckily everything goes fine. And they can go on with their plans. And then he sees this remark about that others are thinking about retirement when doing that. Let's have a look. Over the lifespan of the next 40 years, he gets in touch with the different topics and themes around retirement. At some point, he's asking himself, what life do I want when I get 70 or 80 years old? And he starts working towards this goal. This process is non-linear, and the tasks are intertwined, connected, and codependent. To sum up, in our proposal, we are taking the concept of nudging. That's the way we intervene. Whenever someone is thinking about retirement, we give them this extra push through the nudges. And we use sub-goals as the underlying background, doing one task, stop, reflect, come back, and do another task. Finally, we want to use experiments. We don't know what messages are successful. We don't know the best way or time to intervene, or what is the best way to address this behavior change at the pattern level. Furthermore, we were thinking in the process of working out the solution of maybe a centralized place where someone gets a personalized overview. This could also be in the train of digitizing live events, that one could think, where could we, all those organizations, the governmental as well as the public organizations, where could they have a place for people to help them at the different tasks. Finally, let's embrace getting older, reflect upon our Western images, questions those negative thoughts about aging. We aim at the future where different generations talk to each other about their realities, learnings, and life. Thinking about the future should no longer be a burden, but something we can keep in mind with a positive attitude. With our proposal, we built a starting point for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Group 1C. Now we have 5 minutes for comments or questions, and again, we would like to hear from your comments on the chat. Please use this QR code, scan it with your phone, and type your comments. We have a question. Please shoot. Say your name, please.
Yes, hello. My name is Johannes Mielo. I'm from the Ministry of Finance, and our public administration is very much based on the idea that a citizen makes an application, which then public administration does something about it. And we have also thought about this idea that we could give these nudges to citizens. But for example, when I think about if we would send a letter that says to a citizen that you should see a doctor, it can be intrusive, like awkward. Have you thought about ideas how to give these nudges? What would be good, like natural ways to do that? Thank you.
Well, as you saw, we are building on events or connections between the public authorities and the citizens, which are already existing. And so this is why it felt less intrusive, or it's not the public agency coming and saying, hey, you should care about retirement. And also, this is why we want to use experiments, because it's important to test the messages which could trigger action thinking, but without being, without making the citizen uncomfortable.
Do we have more questions or comments? We have 2 comments.
Hello, wonderful presentation. My name is Betsy, and I actually took this course a few years ago, so exciting to see how it's developing. But I was just wondering, you included 2 life events that are not necessarily available to a lot of people, especially as we modernize. I'm thinking of like myself in the fact that I might never marry my partner, or I might never have children. So have you thought about how these changes in how we live our lives would present different opportunities for nudging?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think we have thought that there would be even more nudges. These were just a few of examples. And of course, marriage isn't happening for everyone. But we were trying to find platforms or things that people are already doing, so then we can include the nudges in there. So there would be even more nudges. So that would be part of the experiment, I think.
Mm-hmm.
If I can add something, we are conscious that people don't get all the nudges or are not triggered by all the nudges, but the point is that there is a diversity of nudges and multiple nudges to make sure that everyone gets triggered at some point about thinking about preparing for retirement. Then it sparkles some reflective actions about other topics.
We have two questions here in the front. One from Laura.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Might be something that you kind of answered already, but I was interested to ask anyway about the nudges, and especially maybe coming to the financial stuff of how can you financially prepare. Have you thought about what kind of experiments or nudges would be sent to people who might be making very low salaries, who maybe don't have the luxury of putting aside some certain amount of money to savings in the case of future? So what would be some of the nudges that could be used to encourage those people to think of these things as well?
Let me be very honest. We thought about it, but it's maybe already going a bit too far for our solution, because we were more focusing on the idea and the concept of nudging and how it could be implemented, rather than the concrete examples of what nudges should be used. And once again, I will use the experiments part to say that this has to be tested, and yeah, it's maybe going a bit, it's the next steps.
Yeah, and yeah, of course, we were during our process, we were thinking that not everyone has like a bright future, and what if these nudges like add the negative perceptions? But I think with the nudges we can help people to understand that even if the situation wouldn't be like all sunny and bright and happy, if you do these nudges can help you to prepare and maybe make it even a bit more better. So, yeah.
And then, very brief last question.
Okay, hi, my name is Katja. I'm also an alumni of this course. I was at the very first one. And I was thinking about the nudges. I'm probably your target group. I've never thought about retirement or anything related, like past 20 years. But I've got really nervous during these presentations, and the idea of of nudges, which is like itself is really great. But have you considered to make them maybe offering some options? Because like if you just nudge a person, and the person doesn't know what to do actually. Yes, I'm starting to think about it, but I have still no idea, like what can I do? What are my options? Have you thought about like what type of nudges these would be or could be? Thank you.
Thank you.
This is why also we were suggesting maybe to use the platform which DVV is developing to make a list of precise sub goals or small tasks that people can achieve now to start this preparation without feeling overwhelmed by the whole process and the goal in its end.
And then there are like a range of different organizations that you can go to, and that they are offering help in each of these topics, much more specialized than we could ever give you with just a nudge.
So it would be more of a guided reflection so you don't feel overwhelmed with all these thoughts. Thank you very much, Group 1C. Tom? Thank you. Now, last group of this block, please welcome to the stage Tomorrow Together.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are the last group under DBB and Ministry of Finance brief of live events services for a dignified old age. My name is Camila. I am here with Uyanga, and we have been working with Shaolin and Regina, who unfortunately couldn't join us today. To start our presentation, I will very briefly ask you to think about retirement and to imagine a picture of how your own retirement would look like. I can see good smiling faces, worried faces. So what this is telling us is that retirement won't be the same for everyone, right? And we might have some similarities, we might have some differences, but it won't be the exact same things for all of us. How did we arrive to this statement? We started this course by running interviews with experts. We did a questionnaire with citizens on this same question: how would you imagine your retirement would look like? We did secondary research on academic articles, press articles on the topic of trends on retirement, and finally we had an ideation workshop with our partners from DBB. So this statement I was making before about retirement being something different from everyone, it's based on life courses perspective. Life courses perspective have been widely used in social sciences, policy sciences, and more. And what it tells us about retirement is that if we want to think about what happens in this last stage of life, we need to pay attention to the experiences that have influenced this prior in our life. And you might be or not wondering, how does this life courses perspective relates to live events, which has been the ongoing project that DBB has been working on. So the way we see this is as zooming in. So for us, life courses is the big picture that goes from birth to death. If we zoom in a bit more, we can find life stages such as childhood, youth, adulthood, and old age. And if we zoom in a bit further, in all these life stages, we will find live events. There are some of these live events, such as going to daycare, starting school, that are more likely to be located during the first life stages of our life. But then there are other ones, such as migration, that could happen in any of these. So our main findings were two. First, there are delays in the system when we want to work with issues around retirement. And this means, as this quote from one life courses perspective researchers illustrate, if we want to address aging population by taking into account older individuals only, we might be too late for tackling some issues around retirement. This has been addressed widely by predictive governance in policy making and other strategies, but this is the one that will guide our model. The second finding was that there is a wide range of diversity on how we experience retirement. So as this quote from a researcher we interview states, retirement could be a quite positive event for some of us, while it can be the opposite for others. And we want to address this by enhancing multi-party collaboration in our project. And this multi-party collaboration includes citizens. And when we include citizens as participants on a process on influencing policy making, we want to think about, well, it has been brought to our attention actually, that we could be thinking about this Finnish paradox, which is, this is defined by OECD as this phenomenon happening in Finland, in which people have high trust in institutions and democracy, while they don't believe that they can influence political processes. So let's keep all of these theories, statements, discoveries, findings in mind, and now use them to navigate through our process.
Okay, so let me introduce you our concept, Tomorrow Together. Tomorrow Together is a model that adopts dynamic life courses perspective in policy making. The aim is to solve delays in the retirement system based on values of multi-party collaboration, predictive governance, and public trust. We have these 4 stages in the model, and these 4 stages are adapted from Policy Lab's Government as a System toolkit. And we have this collaboration, modeling, partnering, and agenda setting stages. And through each of these stages, we adopt citizen-centric policy making informed by future needs of the citizens. Before starting to any of these stages, we'd like to introduce the main owners or the process drivers of this entire model. Will be the Ombudsman for the Elderly People in collaboration with Ministry of Health and Social Affairs and with the support of DWW's service design team. And they set up the public platform to invite public to start engaging in the discussion of how their visions for the future retirement will be, and then launching the platform using existing services such as OMA Study and open government and also house space. Okay, so the main stage, collaborating stage, starts. Here, the main aim is to create this co-creation of visions that is to set up the future research agendas by citizens, and it will be validated by academic researchers and civil servants as well about the societal actual needs and relevance of it. And in this stage, the first main participants will be citizens, researchers, and civil servants. But across all these stages, the main organizers of these events will be Ombudsman for the Elderly People and DWW design team. And we have 4 different activities happening during this stage. One is vision workshop, where everybody of the participants gather together to create the visions for the future retirement and concerns and even fears of the citizens. And then it goes into a public platform. It will be uploaded, and public will be aware of it and start discussing about it and even comment about it. And these inputs will be collected together and synthesized and re-uploaded to the platform again. And next stage, modeling stage. In the modeling stage, at the previous stage, visions are collected together to turn into ideas. And these ideas will be more about realizing those visions in the future retirement. And again, the participants will be citizens, researchers, civil servants, along with private and third sector. And we have 4 steps: ideation workshops, and synthesizing those ideas, and matching ideas with the life events. So here, we should think about life events again, that how the life events can meaningfully connect to the ideas we generated, and how life events can act as a trigger or starting point to start placing all these solutions into life courses. And then finally, again, these results will be uploaded to the platform to create status update to the citizens. And the third stage is partnering stage. In this stage, we take all the ideas collected from the previous stage and then going to be realize this with the actual relevant or potential partners. And here, the goal is to connect these ideas meaningfully and to the partner organizations that can create big impact towards the future of retirement. And I would like to emphasize DVV's role in here of identifying the potential partners and connecting them together. And we have 4 different steps here: reaching out, identifying and reaching out to possible partners, sharing the details of previous stage evidence and results, and establishing a partnership with the organizations, and again, communicating this information through the platform. And then last stage is agenda setting. So in agenda setting, we will be working on more real and concrete actions that can influence future of retirement directly or indirectly. And the aim of this process is to what we set out to do in the first place, influencing and informing the policy. And all the previous actions and results of the previous stages will be tracked, measured, and studied extensively to connect with the current, ongoing, or future policy making. And here, our main participants are public institutions, private companies, and third sector. And we have 2 activities: assessing and studying the materials and linking with the future or ongoing policy making. And across all these different stages, we have these 2 things constantly happening as a cycle: communicating in the platform and then taking the concrete action, and again reporting back it to the platform, because we believe citizens should be informed about their engagement and their inputs as well. Yeah, so let's find out how it plays out with the real example.
Yes, so this all might seem very abstract, but let's see one example to see how this works. So let's imagine we are on the first collaborating stage, and we have here on the side this pool of visions that we extracted actually from the survey we ran at the beginning of the project. So let's pick one, which is maintaining healthy lifestyle, as one possible emerging vision from our collaborating stage, yes. Now let's go to the modeling stage, in which under this vision we would ideate with the partners and citizens that we were mentioning before. So under the vision of having a healthy lifestyle, we can have ideas as including exercise in formal settings, libraries, health toolkit, neighborhood and community training initiatives. The ideas can be 100. But each of these ideas, of course, needs to be curated. This is why the participation of civil servants and researchers in the workshop is so crucial. Each of these ideas can be matched to a list of live events that can be influenced or can take advantage of the realization of these ideas. So, for example, if we choose including exercise in formal settings, this is something that it's already done in school, as exercising is part of the curricula, but it could be included in building a career, parenthood, or retirement. So we had the first the vision that was maintaining healthy lifestyle, an idea that was including exercise in formal setting, and a live event that could be connected to this idea. So in the third step, which is partnering, we need to find partners that could take concrete action on this idea for this certain live event. So in this case, this could be, for example, Ministry of Labor, public and private employers, or labor unions. And in the agenda setting stage, we imagine, for example, that one of these partners could have been influenced by this idea, and let's imagine this partner is the private or public employers, and that they have started running a pilot in which workplaces are providing a paid model of hours to exercise. And again, this is just an idea of how this could look like, but the possibilities are endless. Well, not endless, but depending on what we think about retirement. Maybe endless is too ambitious. So you have seen along our model how we have multi-party collaboration, predictive governance, and public trust as the values guiding
this whole model. And we believe that it relates a lot to DBB's and Ministry of Finance aim of having a people-oriented, proactive society that will be able to provide the best possible circumstances for people to take care of their own well-being and that of their family during different live events. So thank you.
Thank you, Camila Noyanga. Yes, thank you. Now we have 5 minutes also to give some comments by using this QR code, written comments on the chat, please, but also the opportunity to hear from you. Any comments or questions? Here in the front we have 2 hands up from the DVB team. Sirpa, would you like to start?
Thank you. Sirpa Fourastier from DVV Service Design Team. This was one that really enlightened me because it encourages us to see how the ideas can really come from the people themselves, and we should just find the way to manage them and even encourage even more ideas. And of course, your representation was absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Same opinion here about that. It was a great presentation and really exciting ideas. You talked a lot about this platform where these things would kind of take place, and I was just curious to hear more about what exactly you had in mind regarding this. Was it more about like for communicating all the and kind of pooling all of the work that's being done, or what exactly was this idea behind, or the vision for this platform?
Well, the platform has, I think, mainly 2 purposes that we have been talking about. The main one is probably communication on what's going on the project. But another one is that within a workshop, we cannot host an endless amount of participants. So by publishing and allowing online commenting, for example, you could have you could read wider audience, receive wider feedback on what you're doing. That doesn't necessarily need you to physically host a huge community in a workshop. Yeah.
Does this answer your question, Katrina? Would you like to add something? More comments or questions from the audience here? There's a hand up.
Hey, Mirko, also alumni from DFG. So first, super congratulations to all the work you did. I know there's quite a lot of work. And also very great presentation. I really appreciate the quite high level approach that you took. And I mean, you even said that maybe this seems a bit vague for now and gave us a good example, but I really appreciate it because what it made me think about is that in the end, it doesn't even have to be a retirement as the vision. You can take any point of the life events and go backwards from that one. So just creating this fairly abstract approach of just basically a participatory platform that includes all those parties, I think this is quite beautiful because take marriage or take migration and go ask people the same questions. You can use the same progress or process, which is kind of backcasting from what people like to have and then have that roll out throughout their life stages. So not really a question, just a comment that I think it's very nice in the way how it's quite flexible, and it's a beautiful solution. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We still have some time. If there are more comments or questions, if you'd like to share, please raise your hands. Yes, another one from DVB.
I could continue. Did you think in what kind of tasks you would put us when we have some ideas coming here and there, and how should we then start with those problematic things to go on further, and what kind of solutions we could face?
Thank you.
Well, we have been thinking a lot about the DBB design team because this for us felt
like it's a policy intervention to influence policy making, but it's also a design intervention that we can trace to many things that are typical of doing co-design, right? So gathering with citizens, creating these ideas, facilitating a lot dialogue between some groups that might have some power imbalances, such as, I don't know, diversity in citizens itself, but also between citizens and these knowledgeable researchers or civil servants. So I would say, in just alone, to name one example in the facilitation and guidance and carrying out this co-design and co-creation phases, there's a lot of design work to do. Yeah.
Very good answer. Thank you very much. We finish here the round of Q&A for this last group. Thank you so much. And before we close with the live event services for dignified old age, we will have a 15-minute stakeholder discussion. So let me welcome Jonas Aitonurmi from DVV to the front. Nico is here. Yes, Nico Ruas Tetsari there, for example. Yes, from the Ministry of Finance, next to Jonas, please. And then representatives from our student groups. Please come forward, Jizu, Emilia, and Camila. I'll take one, you can share. We have prepared some questions for you.
Thanks.
Co-created by all of us. A lot has happened in 12 weeks. All these projects have been developed in 12 weeks, combining the different methods and perspective that we presented before and that students also reminded us in their design process. What has been the most memorable moments and key takeaways of this design process for you?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that outstanding work from all of you in less than 12 weeks. That's amazing job. Wonderful presentations. Be proud of your teams and your work. Very good job. When we begin this process in March, maybe, I was a little bit nervous about our task because you are young. I'm also a youngish person, and I was worried that is the life events of retirement or an dignified old age interesting enough for you to solve and figure out how would that look like in the future. But like I said, outstanding work. You are very strong design professionals, and of course you managed to find the essentials of our challenge and to put it in a wonderful presentations and showing us also how to use design as a method and what kind of multiple ways or like outcomes you can have from this kind of process, from nudging to very higher level solutions that can be used in all of the life events.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, it's easy to agree with Jonas that that's great work and in such a tiny schedule, but I think you have really made a huge effort for our preparatory work for years to come. And yeah, I can see that I'm a bit older than Jonas because I have my notes in paper and you have your mobile phone, or maybe just agency is a bit more dynamic working place than ministry. Well, but yeah, I think that each of you teams really grasped the idea of the live event-based digitalization we are looking for, and you kind of had the notion about the diversity of human life, and you really applied the human-centric design approach. And for me, it's always fascinating to see this kind of design work in action. So it was really really inspiring, and it has today it was really exciting to see kind of different points of view how you can use the human-centric application, and one thing that focused in my mind was about the nudging, that some could argue that nudging is more like a state-centric way, not like human-centric, but there's something about the nudging to us to wonder in future years as well. And of course, states or government is all the time using nudging in their policies regarding taxation or developing built environment or anything like that. So yeah, but really plenty to digest.
Definitely, and like to hear from our students as well, going back to what Jonas was saying. Has it been difficult for you to engage in retirement? It's so far away topic. How has it been for you to engage with this topic and engage others in discussing this topic? Who'd like to start? Emilia.
I can start because I have this. Well, I was the only Finnish person in our group, and when we started, everyone was like, okay, how is this working? How is this working? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. So, and when we started to dig deeper of the organization level and everything, it felt really overwhelming and really difficult. And the first idea of, oh, there's pre-retirement, the retirement, and post-retirement. Oh, what are we doing? But for me, the interview with TKL, and when we found out that the importance of preparation and how they affect of the different options, it was kind of like aha moment, at least for me. And I was like, oh, okay, this is super interesting. This is something that I think we should continue working on. So that's maybe most memorable moment for me.
What about you, Jiso?
Yes, it was hard at first as an international student to understand what is the value of living in Finland. However, we had amazing partners who were always engaging our questions. And I remember Iiro was just calling them, hey, asking those questions. And I was like, as from the different country, I was like, well, how does the civil servant just answer our things? And how are they just engaging us right away? And they were very inspiring. So I kind of know why Finland is kind of happiest country, and every service is tremendously focused on users. So yeah, at last it wasn't hard at all, I would say.
Would you like to add something, Camila? No. Let's move on to the next question that we have prepared for you. Our students have presented 3 proposals. Each have a different point of view. You have mentioned nudging, for example, being one of the proposals. What specific learnings on live events and the future of retirement you can take from our students into the future?
Yeah, well, if I start this time, well, I really like the idea of you discussing the Finnish paradox in your third team's presentation. That's a real challenge we are facing, and that's something we definitely need to tackle in our public administration. So I really like this idea of the pool of visions, or as Sirpa said, that like from ideas from people themselves. So this is like the idea that democracy or representative democracy works, but the idea of having this direct channel about the visions we want to strengthen is a really great one. Well, the first group, I think you had this idea about the governance model of the ecosystem based on any life event. That's something we are actually figuring or exploring at the moment, and I think there's plenty for us to continue our work or use or copy or steal with pride. And the nudging idea, well, I have to digest more about that. How we could. I'm not an expert on retirement, but I think there's plenty of ways to nudge in every life event. But that's like more like substance issue in these particular life events.
Yeah, if I begin with something that is not obvious always when we are creating something or developing something new in government, is that you have the courage to challenge obvious, and you have patience to not to jump to conclusions and to challenge, and if I use the old Greek word parrhesia, to speak up frankly about what kind of challenges we are facing. And I think that's very fantastic, and that is something we want to take with us when we are building the live events. I think Nico said pretty much everything I had also in my mind, but I think if I say something about each group, from the first group 1A, I think that was wonderful that you gave us the explanation of what is dignified old age. And I think despite the future, what it might be look in 2040, 2050 or so, we still need services that are available, and we need user abilities, and for that we must ensure that we have all the knowledge and literacy skills for all of the citizens in Finland, residents in Finland. And I think that was fantastic how you gave us kind of a ready-made tools for us and for our service designers to use to implement the standardization. 1B, I just wonder how did you make this look so simple? Like, it was a quick deep dive into social psyche, and that was wonderful that you showed us that live events is not just one contact point, but it is a process, and I think that gives us a perspective on how to build these live events. And I really admired your systemic mapping of this very complex system we are living in and we are working in. And I think that's a very good reminder to give to put more focus on systemic and societal impacts of live events as well. And 1C, I think it's important to say out loud that participation needs a lot of work, and for that we need good usable frameworks and tools like platforms you gave us. And I think that's very important when we are looking for scenarios of digitalization or future of digitalization, that we are tackling the power asymmetries in digitalization as well. And I think that was important that you showed us how subjective retirement and getting old is. And I think these are very good learnings for us to take to match people and services together.
Brilliant, what a thorough summary. Thanks so much, Jonas. I'm jumping to the next question, and maybe I will ask our students, so what next? We want to hear from our partners how will the ideas presented today can influence your work going forwards around live events. But maybe we start by asking our students, what is the first next very little step that they could take forward from your proposal? Very quickly, each of you.
For our 1C, we want to test our models with service designers in DVV and test what are the capabilities. Are they actually able to create a standard that can go cross-section, and not just retirement, and also for another series of service ecosystem. Yes, that will be our next step.
For us, it would be finding even more platforms where we could have these nudges and then experiment what would be the most efficient.
For us, maybe I would say connecting to the issue of digitalization 2030, I guess was which was the goal.
Yes.
I would say that our perspective would fit there, thinking if this is the vision, then how do we trace this back into individuals of all ages currently? So kind of maybe just taking that perspective would be good enough. Implementing the whole model, marvelous, but
Some ideas of first steps. What do you think about this?
Well, I see nodding heads from our side, so I think we are going to continue with your ideas, and I can't wait to see how we are going to use these 3 presentations together. But final words is in the ministry, so go ahead.
Yeah, well, as Nuria stated in the very early phase of this session, that we have this digitalization strategy for the year 2030, that we should have this 40 life events digitalized and automatized, and the same strategy maintains our objective of human-centric public governance. And I think in the key of this goal is the idea of strengthening our citizen engagement, and these presentations really gave us value for our work. And well, the citizen engagement might not be typically one of our strongholds or something we typically do. Well, of course we have like Sirpa's team, so we are not starting from scratch, and we have actually founded this citizen engagement task force that is led by DVV's Finnish Digital Agency's Marko Latvanen. So I'm sure that these ideas will carry on with Marcos and his task force's team. And yeah, but first of all, a lot to digest. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. As we are putting more work on you, you might need to increase your capacity. So remember us, remember our students. They're graduating soon, and as you can see, they're very talented. We thank you all very much, first of all, the students, for this fantastic presentation. Now you can enjoy the rest of the event. And next, we are going to have a very short break because we are 5 minutes behind. So we will ask you to be back at 2:35 so that we can start.
All right, welcome back. I think almost everyone is back in the room. We're halfway there, so almost there. Now that you're all back, it's time for our second batch of groups to present, and also for our second brief. As Nuria mentioned before, our second brief has been commissioned by the Ministry of Transport and Communication, and it's called Accessible Travel Chains. And this brief is actually inspired by the ongoing and also evolving National Transport System Plan for 2021 and 2023, which is also called LEAK and 12. And the aim with this brief was to actually uncover and actually dive deep into all the barriers that service operators and also users experience when it comes to accessibility in what we called end-to-end multimodal journeys. So what our students have been looking into, and that you will hear now, is how can we improve accessibility as a whole in the local context, while also enabling individuals and participants to be active agents, let's say, in society. So if we can welcome to the stage Group 2A of Accessible Together.
We make society work because we work together. And any issue on this level needs to be addressed as a joint effort between many people, simply because it involves many people. And this is true for societal functions such as the public transport system as well.
So, hello everyone and welcome. We are here to present you our project Accessible Together, a framework of collaboration for an accessible travel chain. And we are Katrina, Suvi, Mina, and I am Gabriel. And in a nutshell, our agenda for today will cover the story of Sana, our research and analysis and finally our intervention proposal. So now, Suli and I will leave you with Katrina and Mina.
Thank you, Gabriel. Okay, so to start us off, I'd like you to meet Sanna, working for LVM. So she's currently in her office and has been looking into where they are exactly when it comes to accessibility in the public transport system. Reading the reports and experiences collected, one in particular stands out to her. A person with special needs in Helsinki traveled to Jyväskylä. While traveling independently in Helsinki went fine, trouble arose when they reached their destination. There wasn't a way to get onto the bus by themselves since the ramp was broken, and the bus driver did not step out to help. The reason for this is the perceived standard from the driver of the bus, that the person would travel with a personal assistant, but in Helsinki, the standard would be to travel without one. So both have an idea of accessibility, but these are not the same. Sanna is frustrated. It seems like everyone's efforts are not giving impactful results, only scattered actions that aren't able to change the experience for those they're meant to help. Looking at the stacks of paper on her desk, Sanna wonders how LVM can ensure that they do. After all, if one part of the journey is inaccessible, the whole journey is inaccessible. And the problem that Sanna has is not unique to LVM. It is not unique to HSL, not to VR, Traficom, Vela, Nysse. The public transport system in Finland has barriers hindering shared accessibility. What is needed is to ensure effective collaboration, to unlock these barriers. And this is where we come in. But to further understand how we got to this point, I think it's best to give you a little bit of background into our research and our analysis. So, to get to this point, we used methods such as initial desk research, which is basically research such as reports and articles, together with benchmarking, where we looked at other cities, other countries, and see how they have worked with accessibility to gain an overview of the subject, and to prepare us for 2 workshops and later semi-structured interviews with people representing LVM, operators, service providers, accessibility organizations, and a municipal network. And these points of interaction, the workshops and the interviews, were the driving force of the project. By repeating the cycle of interview, analysis, and work on the intervention, we wanted those working with these issues and experiencing them firsthand to steer the outcome of our proposal. So, to make sense of the data that we gathered, we worked with affinity mapping, which is basically categorizing, sorting into themes, then connecting these together to be able to evaluate, compare, contrast, to try to find the core of what is being said. And our core insight was that the current transport system does not really encourage shared work toward accessibility. And within this, it was pretty much unanimously decided during one of our workshops with our stakeholders that the key part to focus on within this should be collaboration. So, to address this, we created a framework where I will now hand over to Mina for the details.
Thanks, Katrina. Let's dive into the intervention. What we are proposing is a 3-level framework to build a dynamic for collaboration that is designed to last. Our intervention consists of 3 parts, going from the decision-making level to the coordination level and finally to the pilot. And this is the point which acts as a bridge between coordination and the real world. The base structure is with LVM, where a small branch dedicated to working with accessibility within the ministry scope has been created. The committee consists of LVM and different service providers, as well as invited expertise. Their main task is to work with accessible transport chains and getting used to collaborating within this area. The committee should include decision power and expertise. Decision power is needed to mandate and put priority on these issues. In addition to the knowledge gathered from the core committee, they also have the ability to involve further expertise as needed. These could be, for example, organizations representing users, such as accessibility organizations, as well as smaller local operators or municipalities. To have a tangible starting point within this framework, the committee has a pilot project. Before we dive in, what do we mean with a pilot? So a pilot for us is basically a trial of services or products on a smaller scale in order to evaluate information to take the project further. Potentially, when everything goes well, this can be scaled up. As an example, we chose stations on a travel chain as the base of our pilot. That is the entire experience from door to door that a person experiences while traveling. This could, for example, be to create the most accessible transfer station as part of a travel chain. For example, we could use 3 stations in differently sized cities, such as Helsinki, Tampere, and Jyväskylä. However, while the committee is working together, what they are actually doing is prototyping a mode of collaboration with each other to make impactful changes to the accessible travel chains for the end user. So, the focus is not on the pilot project, but on setting up a structure for collaboration for everyone involved. Let's take a step back. How does the system look like as a whole? You remember Sanna's story from the beginning. So Sanna and her colleagues from LVM start looking into who to involve in the committee. After setting up some ground rules, together with the stakeholders, they decide on a pilot to work on. Together, the operators and accessibility organizations and other expertise in the committee, for example, technicians or relevant municipalities, start dividing tasks and try how to work with each other to reach their common goal. This is where the tangible pilot project will help them and guide them to collaborate. By Sanna and her colleagues monitoring and evaluating the collaboration together with the committee, they let this guide the next cycle of collaboration. So, where is the value in this, Katrina?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked, Mina. Well, we know that there has been previous initiatives of committees and pilots that just ended with a report. What we're suggesting is to set up a permanent structure for collaboration, rather than a one-off project. A reason to come together and work toward a common goal of accessibility that feeds back into the efforts that you do from policy level to service provider to action and then back up again. Something designed to last. As well as something that has the possibility to spread. What would it be like if other ministries had their own committees that could work with each other? As well as all the steps don't need to happen right away. Maybe just a first step could be to see, well, who should we involve from LVM side in this committee before taking any further steps? By collaborating in a structured way, you can make a cohesive effort, stacking those actions together as a whole, meaning better accessibility for the people who need it. We're proposing this because of the work that led us to this point. Collaborating with a group of people from different organizations, and some of you are here today, where we've seen participants complementing each other and taking discussions further. All that really needs to happen is to bring it together. And what we're doing is unlocking the barriers in this system, allowing it to flow freely. Because we make things in society work because we work together. And work towards accessibility needs to be addressed as a joint effort, since it involves ministries, service providers, organizations, and people from whom it is just a part of their everyday lives. And again, you already know how to do this. What we're proposing is simply a way to start, a structured way to approach it, and together create a model to make it last. And with that, we would like to say thank you for collaborating with us to make this happen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Katrina and Mina. You know the drill by now. We have 5 minutes for questions for the whole group. So if anyone has a question, a comment, a remark, please raise your hand. There in the back, there's a question.
Hey, thanks so much for your presentation. I was wondering how, because the journey you've described also includes certain areas that are outside the scope of LVM, for example, bus producers, and I'm curious, how did you include these kind of other stakeholders into the process and into the general research of your phase? And asking because also those underlie to certain standards that are outside of the scope of then transportation providers.
Well, from the sound of it, you were asking, was it either how we involved them in our process when we did research? Okay, so basically we tried first to both look at the major stakeholders we had already, but then trying to do our own research to see, okay, so do we have, for example, long distance buses? What about the smaller local providers? And then we contacted them directly, tried to get an interview, talk with them, try to extract the information there, and then comparing between the ones we already had contact with to these local providers and long distance buses, for example. Does that answer your question? Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Do we have any other comments? Also, don't forget to scan the QR code. Yes, we have a question here in the front.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Joona Pakkalen from HSL, so I'm head of passenger information, so I've been participating in this work. We are trying to provide the whole solution for accessibility travel stations in our region. And of course, we are most delighted to have this kind of discussion that we could have a cooperation in a state level, on government level, to have this cooperation further from our region, from our area. And on this topic, we have made an initiative 2 weeks ago with VR to have a cooperation, like from industry side, to have this kind of things implemented. And what's good on your suggestion that you should have this kind of a quality corridor, that's what this looked like to me, to have from Jyväskylä via Tampere to Helsinki, like for a pilot. Then we can really see the difference and really pinpoint the problematic areas on real pilot. So, yeah. What is my question? That's the harder part. When it comes to committees, often people tend to think that they are gray and like solid structure that it really doesn't have impact. So what are the key issues that you have encountered that could be the game changers for this kind of committee to work compared to like traditional way of thinking committees, just to moving papers from stack to another? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So the main part for our committee is both that they work with the real world, going back to, for example, action level. So there's actually feedback from actual people going out into the actual world. But at the same time, we also have the committee that, for example, LVM is the main decision maker in a sense. And then we imagine some sort of core participants. And for example, that could be HSL and several other service providers, but then inviting these extra expertise. So you have a sort of core structure, but then that this sort of, you get new people into it and new perspectives dividing on what kind of pilot you're doing, what kind of experiments you're trying, to have a sort of new perspectives coming in all the time. And I think that is our main point with the committee, that it is not static, for example.
Wonderful, thank you. Any last very high-speed comments? Very well, thank you so much. Thank you, Group 2A. And now, well, welcome on stage, Group 2B, for creating an informed journey.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Today, we'll be talking about systems, just like our nervous system. You might be wondering, how on earth does this relate to accessible travel chains? Hello, we are a mix of different colors and shapes and design disciplines. Stay on board while we take you through our journey.
So, to begin, our research question was to learn about the vision and action of the service provider in achieving the sustainable travel chain. So, for example, what are the gaps that prevent the system from being accessible to all the users? So one of the first critical points that emerged from the roundtable discussion with our stakeholders is that accessibility of information. So this was also later confirmed by other interviews with stakeholders and also other entities. So what is information? For information, we refer to all the information that a user should be able to access in order to travel easily. For example, maybe you have some kind of physical limitation, luggage, or maybe you just want to get from point A to point B as quick as possible. The user should be able to plan the journey according to their needs, but also be sure to arrive their destination safely. So, since our initial discussion with our valuable stakeholders, we understood that providing accessible information is very important in achieving the accessible travel chain. And just like our nervous system, it is essential part of our body, so is information for the broader transportation system. Providing reliable and efficient communication is also the key for achieving sustainable mobility. So, considering the importance of accessible information, we want to reframe our first question: how can we achieve accessible travel? To how does information find the user?
To answer the question and to understand the current challenge that users might encounter during their travel, let's have a look to the journey of Lena. Lena is a wheelchair user commuting to work every day by public transport from the outskirts of the city to the city center. She likes to be on time and plan her journey beforehand to avoid any surprises on the way. Similar to most mornings, Lena is about to take the metro to work. She checks the route from the app. It only shows the metro locations and there are no changes announced. Once Lena arrives at the metro station, she finds out the elevator is out of order. When she checks the app, nothing looks different and there is no new information. Frustrated with the situation, Lena chooses another route, including a bus and a tram. On the way to the bus stop, Lena notices construction work, making it difficult for her to reach the stop. Again, the app doesn't show any real-time information about the disruption. Upset with the new obstacle in her journey, Lena ends up calling a taxi and arrives at work later than expected. Lena always leaves feedback for the service provider to improve. However, she feels discouraged by the system, as she doesn't notice any change. This is an example of a user's journey, but actually, Lena is not alone in this. Currently, the system of information flows looks like this. Different sources of information are spread across many stakeholders and platforms. And when someone notices a problem, the others can't reach that information. So, where are the critical gaps that cause these blocks in the information flow right now? From our interviews, we confirmed that relevant information such as accident, malfunctions, temporary inaccessibility of stops, and crowded transport is not collected and made available for user in real time. This really undermines the trust in public transport and make it difficult to plan a journey in advance. That's why, to bridge those gaps and make accessible information real-time and available to all users, we need to connect all those actors together and put them on the same page. And how do we do this? Well, to start, the small changes in this complex information system and eventually produce bigger changes in the broader transport system, we chose to focus on 3 points. Firstly, evolving the structure of the system, of the information system, by promoting collaboration between stakeholders and transforming the role of the users from passive to active. Secondly, defining the rules of the information system by creating new regulations and setting standards for sharing information. Lastly, structuring the information flow through co-creation session, bringing together all the stakeholders, including the users. And thanks to this leverage point that we just shown you, we were eventually able to identify where to place our proposal and the type of intervention to design.
So how do we go about this? Remember the nervous system we mentioned in the beginning of the presentation? Well, the human body, our own individual system, works thanks to the central point where all the signals pass through. You guessed it, our brain is the central operator that analyzes every input we give it through our senses. Now, imagine a platform with a central database for collecting, processing, and communicating real-time and accurate information to users. What we propose is a very similar system. SIS is the Centralized Information System. Instead of stimulus, the system collects different sets of information from multiple sources. It then filters and sends them to the users through different service platforms. This information includes all the input regarding unforeseen events that can occur inside the transports, stations, and all the infrastructure that interferes with the travel journey. Let's look at how it works. Public and private service providers, agencies, municipalities, and users all contribute to the input of real-time information. Users can provide updates on events that happen on the spot through different feedback channels, such as the ones from service providers, private companies, and social media. The system filters, verifies, and analyzes both feedback and information input through an AI-based platform trained by a specialist team. The processed information is sent to service providers in real time, which supplies the users with accessible travel planning. All information is open source, which means all actors involved in the system have access to it. So what do you get out of this? Well, service providers get access to verified real-time information from other entities and are able to contribute for a sustainable travel chain that people choose over other options. Municipalities and infrastructure entities benefit from the shared responsibility, with every actor contributing to the system, and the fact that the problem is addressed immediately. And last but not least, the users transition from passive to active contributors for the functioning of the system, and they also get access to real-time information to help plan the journeys better.
So how do we get everyone on the same page? This is a twofold solution for a local level using the greater Helsinki area as an example. First things first. As with any running system, an action plan needs to be established. We will now show you how an overview that will be later explained in detail. The first step is to acknowledge the kind of information that needs to be collected. For this, we propose to bring everyone together to co-creation sessions. The second step is to generate a criteria for each actor to follow. Then organize a campaign to give citizens an incentive and understanding of why their contribution is so important. In the future, a team of experts will continuously develop the platform, and this is the way how we can reach the goal of providing accessible travel chains for every citizen. Step 1 is co-creation sessions, co-creation workshops to understand what information needs to be collected to build a smooth and accessible travel chain. Hosted by LVM, this workshop will be facilitated by service designers from the city of Helsinki. The participants are stakeholders, both private and public providers, and every user group. The participants are divided into accessibility groups, each working on a specific need. The process is then divided into 3 phases. Phase 1, journey planning, consists of describing and mapping out the user's existing journey according to their accessibility group. Phase 2, critical analysis, is where the participants acknowledge the gaps and opportunities within the journey maps, focusing on the information they are and aren't provided with. And the last phase, information clustering, is where all the working groups come together and compare their results. So what do we get out of this? An action plan for which information to collect, and it also brings people together who usually don't meet to discuss local transportation problems, creating a networking opportunity. Step 2 is for making sure that the step 1 stays reliable. For that, we need to set a new regulation. So in simple terms, each stakeholder of the travel system must share the type of information decided in the workshop with the centralized information system. This is to standardize accessible travel chains. In more detail, Every transportation service provider, as well as agencies such as Väylä, ELY, and the municipalities of the greater Helsinki area, shall equally and openly share their service information with the SIS. This system is owned by the government and overseen by the Ministry of Transport and Communications. So, going back to our very first question, how does the information find the user? Let's see how this framework affects Lena's journey. Before leaving her home to take the metro, Lena gets a notification from her regular journey planning app. The station's elevator is out of order. After scanning all the travel options, the app informs that the alternative bus Lena is about to take is too crowded, not leaving enough space for the wheelchair. The app suggests the next fastest option, which is taking 2 trams. While on the tram, Lena notices a car accident that has slowed down traffic. She then checks that the situation is not updated on the app and registers it herself. Feeling encouraged and how smooth and reliable the system is, she feels empowered to take the action. To conclude, we believe that accessible information equals accessible travel chains. We propose a framework for building an information system, SIS, for distributing real-time information through a collaborative approach. With this system, we can transform the role of the users from passive to active in reaching this goal. And just like in our nervous system, the network of information and different actors is the very basis for the travel chains to function. By making connections, we look at the more informed and accessible travel future. Let's make it happen, sisters.
All right, thank you so much. Let's go to the 5 minutes that we have for questions, comments. What did this presentation make you think about? Yes, we have a question here from our partners here in the front.
Hi, my name is Taina Saarinen and I come from state agency Traficom. Thank you for your presentation and also for the Group A. I see a straight link between the solutions of Group A and B here. So we know that we lack a lot of information and data on accessibility, and as you have heard many times during the course, we have a lot of organizations owning the data, and there is a lot of data that doesn't exist yet. Basically information that something isn't accessible yet. And to share the data, I think we need a committee that was mentioned before. And so far, we have had a lot of committees, for example, around the public transportation, where the accessibility subject is 1 from 1,000. So I think it is really important to have a focus on accessibility itself. And also, which we haven't done yet much on public transportation, is this using data which is collected by users. I think in transport sector as a whole, there is like when you drive a car, you can actually collect some data already, but users, I don't think we have had that enough yet. So thank you for that presentation.
Thank you for your question, Taina. Do you have any other comments, questions? Yes, here.
Thank you. It seems to me that you had a lot of fun when you were doing this. It's always a good sign. Did you think otherwise, like what kind of information or how many Lenas we need that the lifts are repaired, and what kind of services people would need, and what kind of data these people can provide that even new services are created? Did it come in your discussion, even if you chose this way to represent it?
Well, during our discussion and also during our benchmarking cases, there are like many projects has been implementing around the world. They are collecting more data. So for example, right now the most available data it's like location-based data. So we only know the location of a certain service like car or like even stuff like that. But maybe for more information such as the uneven road, the pavement, the downhill and uphill, a lot of like information can be discussed. So that's why we have idea this kind of workshop. We need to get everyone together to think about what is most relevant to them, and then that will be transfer into a service provider, because like they will have like more concrete ideas. So what should we focus on? So, yeah.
Maybe as a follow-up, during our step 1 that we presented, the workshops, different groups would be divided according to different needs, and how many people exactly for each group we didn't define for this presentation, but of course as many as possible, because the more variety we get, and then combining them together, which is the phase 2 of the workshop, to combine and analyze and compare all of those needs and what possible journeys could be intertwined, and hopefully from there more brainstorming sessions, more plenary sessions could be implemented.
Difficult questions coming in, but we do have time for one more in case someone wants to comment. Yes, over here.
First of all, congratulations again. Very nice presentation. I was wondering about the topic of data privacy or data protection, especially when we talk about those more user data driven systems and ecosystems of data, and where stuff coming from and how it is aggregated and by whom, and talking about more maybe sensitive data that we might have about people in topics such as accessibility. Is that something that you kind of thought about? I mean, I know it's a short time, so you cannot think about everything, but just wondering because of personal interest in the topic.
Short answer is yes. We have discussed about it.
Great.
But also, you also answer your own question due to the time, and also it's not really our focus here right now. We are trying to imagine system, how can we distribute information more sufficiently. But regarding this kind of practical detail, I think it's also worth to have more detailed discussion when it is actually implemented in the future. Yes.
Thanks.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, and last but super not least, we have the streets ahead. So welcome on stage.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the very final presentation of today. We are Group 2C, the Urban Drifters, and the team consists of Jinjun, Kaliste, Greta, and me, Sarah. And we will present to you our vision for accessible public travel chains. In a travel chain, one uses a variety of transport. They go on wheels, rails, they can have wings, and each of them, public or private, has a stakeholder representing them and caring for the development in the perspectives of the travel chains. But within this chain, there is one exception. What happens when the vehicle is our body and the infrastructure is not a railroad, not a road, not an air corridor, but simply a sidewalk? Throughout this course, what exactly an accessible travel chain means was asked many times. And based on our research and interviews, our definition does not start from the bus doors, but already from the traveler's doors. The journey should be accessible from the beginning to the very end, every season, regardless of weather. In other words, this can be referred to as the first and last mile. And if those pieces are not included, the accessible travel chain falls apart. The stakeholder map here shows the complexity of the travel system and the many information flows that exist among the different stakeholders. Throughout our research, we have identified the roles of the actors in the system. Still, there is no one to represent the streets as part of the public travel chain. It is that silent piece of the puzzle we want to tackle in our proposal today.
So this is our analysis from a system perspective of view. But what does that mean for our fragile user of the public transportation chain? Let's hear the story of Miko and Satu. It is in the late February. The sun is finally up, and it's a lovely sunny winter day in Helsinki. Miko, who is recently retired, is going to pick up his granddaughter Satu at daycare in Ruoholahti and bring her to the Emma Museum in Espoo. Like every week, Miko is looking forward to the trip with Satu, and he knows that the walk from the metro station to the museum should take them 15 minutes. And according to the information on his phone, everything seems normal. But once they're outside of the station, he realized that the street is not accessible enough for someone like him with a small child. Despite the lovely weather, he decided to take the bus to get closer to the museum, and Satu feels so disappointed. When they get off the bus, they still need to walk a little bit to the museum, and halfway there, Miko accidentally slips and falls on his back, and Satu gets so scared. Miko managed to get up, but his legs still hurting, so they start to walk very slowly, and finally they reach the museum. And Miko decides to take a cup of coffee and have a moment to breathe. Whew. Miko feels so relieved that he did not get any serious of injuries, but he still feels frustrated about this situation. Even it was a very short walk, it still affected the whole journey. So this is the story of Miko and Satu. As we can see, a person with reduced mobility, the biggest challenge for their trip is the street. And this can apply for any scale of the journey within a city with the public transport or across cities. So how can we change the story? How can we lower the threshold for the citizen to access the public public travel chain? And how can we make the door-to-door service more accessible for every user and for every season?
Okay, so in our proposal, we want to put the street on the map, and we name this new node of articulation the task force. The task force would be a group consisting of civil servants in the municipality, and it would be established into the department of the road management. It will work in close collaboration with the stakeholders of the traditional travel chain, the transport stakeholders, the contractors that are responsible for the maintenance of the public space, and the user groups. The task force will coordinate action to integrate the streets in the public travel chains. From now on, we divided the process into different phases: setting high standards, defining trips and streets, adapting contracts, and piloting. Let's briefly see what a pilot is. It's trying out an idea on a small scale and for a defined period of time. In other words, for us, is creating space and time to try out ideas in real condition to make the travel chain super accessible. Let's go back. After the piloting, it's important to get feedback, to evaluate, and finally reiterate, improving the ideas that worked and discarding what doesn't work. Let's go through each of these phases. The first one is creating the task force, and because of the number of inhabitants, and since there is a very unique situation with 3 municipalities sharing infrastructure and services together, we thought that maybe it's good to start to implement the task force in the Helsinki metropolitan area. Shortly after that is established, a series of workshops with stakeholders from the traditional travel chains, but also representatives from the user group, will be held to define the high standard of accessibility. The high standard definition should be based on best practice seen elsewhere. In our desktop research, we found out interesting examples of stakeholder collaboration and precise requirements for bike lane winter maintenance in Oulu. Or another example, Another example is the on-demand services, such as Colabus in Luxembourg, that can provide alternatives to private car for users with reduced mobility. The next step is to define the actual trip in which the pilot project should be implemented. The trips will be defined with the help from the citizen. For example, a public consultation could be done to vote for one trip. As an example, today we would like to propose a loop trip from Helsinki Center to Espoo. The trips go through populated areas and serves many users. It connects places for leisure, such as museum, and areas with offices, like Keilalahti. Attention is given to places important for people with reduced mobility, so the trips goes by the University Hospital of Meihalahti and near the Senior Center in Ruoholahti. This trips is an example and combine various modes of transport, because the transition between those is one of the key aspects for the accessibility. The next phase is updating the contract with the service providers and the contractor for the street management. For example, we need to harmonize the services based on the walking pace of the user and include clauses for extra parking in this. And when everything is set, we can actually start with our piloting project.
So the pilot phase is the next big phase. And we suggest that the pilot lasts for a year in order to see all the questions of accessibility that arises according to the seasons in Finland. You can imagine in winter, on this picture up here, the snow could be plowed in priority in those trips, making the sidewalks accessible for everyone at all time. In the summer, some parts of the roads could be closed to make the roads or the parts of the trips safer and open to more users. That would also mean encouraging soft travels in every season. So in this imagination thing, we could also imagine that the pilot project would prioritize pedestrians. For instance, the traffic lights could take into consideration the slower pace of moving of some users. Like in this illustration, the traffic light is taking longer. We have as well there are already existing two digital tools named DigiRoad and DigiTransit, and we imagine that they could be used in a more extensive way in order to collect data to keep information on those trips very updated. Finally, in the piloting, there is as well this notion of transparency of who to contact in case of any question. For the users, it would mean having this service that would always be available if you have any concern, either prior to your trip or during your trip if something needs to be fixed immediately. For the service providers, it would be as well having this contact that would make sure we can enable collectively the accessibility of the trips. So what do we expect with this piloting? We expect to gather feedbacks after this piloting experience. And there, again, we can imagine many ways to collect both qualitative and quantitative data. It could range from a satisfactory questionnaire or even an open event by the end of the year, where we would have opportunity for users, service providers, contractors, to discuss all together. Finally, because it takes time to change people's habits and transform a system, we suggest that this experience would be repeated for 5 times, which means 5 years, so that we would have time to select carefully the ideas that would be then implemented permanently. So now, just a quick step back at the broader map, so that we can see better who is involved at which step or which phase. After the task force is created, the service providers and users associations are together defining the high-level standards and selecting the trips or predefining the trips where the pilot will be tested. Once all of this preparation is done, the contracts are agreed between contractors and service providers, And finally, every stakeholders together collaborate in the pilot project. The users are also involved by giving feedbacks. In the end, the evaluation of the feedbacks is done with the task force. In general, like throughout the whole process, the task force is coordinating all the stakeholders' efforts.
So what would this pilot project and task force means for the users? Let's react the story of Miko and Satu. So a few months ago, Miko was voting for the Super Access Trip campaign on Instagram, and now he's so happy to see that his favorite trip from the Helsinki city center to the Emma Museum is included in the pilot project, and he's so excited to try it out. So on the metro, he double-checked his phone, and he noticed that the streets are well plowed as promised with the high standard in pilot project. And when they reached the Tapiola station and start walking towards Pohjantie, everything has changed. So the priority has been given to the pedestrian on that section of the road, and cars drive at a very limited speed, so there's no need to have the traffic lights. And for Miko and Satu, when they cross the streets, now they can cross the street without hurrying and can enjoy the way to the museum. Miko feels safe already. And while walking, Miko also noticed that there's a shuttle bus from the metro station to the museum. And on a lovely weather like this, he preferred to walking outside and enjoy the weather, but he also appreciates this service on another cloudy day. On the way to the museum, he noticed that he's so surprised that there are a lot of people who do not normally use the public transportation are also choosing walking outside and enjoy the weather. He's so happy and proud to be part of the pilot project. And now, after when they reach the museum, Satu goes to her activity, and Miko decides to stay outside for a little bit longer.
So that was a happy ending for Miko and Satu. So to make that story true, what can we do now? Well, the Ministry of Transport can allocate funding to facilitate the project. Municipalities can organize their staff to create the task force, and the service providers and the user representatives can participate to give insights and expertise for the project. We hope, During this presentation, we started identifying the missing link in the accessible travel chains, the door-to-door ambition, the streets. We proposed a solution, the task force, to integrate the streets in the travel chains and further develop soft way of transport for everyone all year round. The streets would finally be represented in the accessible journey plan. We hope you enjoyed your journey with us and would like to conclude on an inspirational quote by one of our interviewees. In a complex system, when you change one thing, you change many things. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. One last round of comments. Any thoughts about this presentation, about Miko and Satu's story? Yes, we have a comment all the way in the back.
Hey, similar question to before. There are a lot of subcontractors working within the system that you were describing, in plowing and in maintaining the streets and the tiers and the paths. How have you included these stakeholders within your research, and what? Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the question. The answer is pretty similar to the other group. We contact them and we try to talk with them and have first-hand insights. And we also thought that it was important to talk with people that are designing for the city. So we managed to have interview with design agency and other service designer that are already tackling these kind of problems to see how they are doing and try to do the same, basically.
Greta?
Thank you.
Any other comments from our partners in general or from the audience? Yes, another question in the back. Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation, Team 2C. Probably because the presentation style was so soft and evocative, this is not a question, it's just a comment. It made me feel like, depending on the weather, Mikko and Satu could, they could just feel like it's like a nice day. I just want to explore Helsinki around. So the type of streets that you have also have an emotional layer. Like when Mikko is in a hurry, maybe they would want to take the shortest route. But probably if they're in a good mood, they may just want to have an explorative way. So I feel like there was an element of emotion and surprise that could be added, and it could change based on the intent of the person at what time. So that's something that just inspired me personally, because I really loved the weather here during this time, and so I just happened to do that. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the lovely comment. I think you had spotted another question around here. Yes, wonderful.
Did you consider any data to support your planning, like heat maps from Sport Tracker, Suunto, Polar, something that people are already providing? And when I go to the new town, I often look, depending on the weather and what kind of sports people are doing on the area, like what kind of routes there are visible for everyone.
Okay, thank you. And basically, we looked at the services that are already and that are already used from some users, and there is also like possibility to integrate the solution from across the groups, of course, and this will be fitting very well in the data management. And also we are imagining to focus on some specific trips, so the data about these trips can be collected in a very specific way and defined way. It's not super general as covering all Helsinki. It's defining some trips for them and be sure that that's working in a very smoothly way. Thank you.
Thank you. Remember that as for all of the other groups, you can still scan the QR code and leave your comments there if you don't feel like talking now. And if we have any other hands up, comments, remarks. Yes, over here.
Hello, I'm from LVM as well. I just wanted to comment to you and to all groups that thanks for your presentations. They were very interesting, and I think they are something we will be able to somehow use in the future. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, if that is all, then thank you so much to the last group. And yes, it's the time to clap now. We have the clicker. So then, yes, we leave room now for the panel discussion. So if the students that will join the panel discussion can come on stage.
Yeah, you can sit on this. Which way? Should be on your left. Is it working already? Okay, great. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and let's start the discussion with the stakeholders and students on this topic. In this course, we follow the design approach involving qualitative research, system analysis, and the development of interventions in close collaboration with diverse stakeholders. And now we want to know from the stakeholders that how was the process for you, and what are the key takeaways from this process? Laura, please go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, I want to. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank from my side as well. It's been amazing to be part of this course. Okay, be part of this course, and like everyone else has already said that the outcomes are amazing, and it's so, my head is so full of ideas now that it's hard to even see that what I have made these notes. But I think, like in these proposals, the cooperation was one of the key elements that we have to develop. We have to do it in a new ways and different ways, and find a new stakeholders to be involved. And I feel that in this process, as well as we from the partner side, there was from the ministry, agencies, from the FinTraffic and the operator side, I think we already learned kind of a new ways of doing the cooperation. We learned the amazing methods of approaching the issues and the challenges, and I feel in that the first workshop that the students put us to draw the map of the operators and dependencies, and even put ourselves on that map, that where we are positioning ourselves, and it was quite of learning and seeing, okay, we haven't perhaps thought this in this perspective from ourselves. So I think we have already took those first steps, at least myself, on learning the new ways of cooperation.
Wonderful. What about you, Laura?
Yeah, thanks. Easy to agree with what Laura previously said. Thank you to all the groups. It's been really a pleasure to be part of this journey with you all, and just really happy to see how each of your take on the brief has developed through the midterm presentations and then the previous this kind of approach overview, and now this final presentation. So just really congratulations to all of you. It's been really great to see, and really agreeing what Laura said. I think the biggest takeaway is this collaboration, which I think was nicely enhanced in all of your presentations as well, that mobility is not something that you can do by yourself unless you're walking everywhere, but but you need collaboration and different parties working together. And I think the way this course has been structured is really nice, and kind of provides both this fresh eyes and fresh minds to a new topic, and this kind of system level approach, but also this human approach, humanity in it, which I think really brings this interesting takes that you've taken with your brief. So really really nicely done overall. I think, like Laura said, there's much to digest and much to be done, I'm sure, but it's been really great to be part of it so far, and looking forward to the future as well.
Thank you for the really nice feedback. What about you students? For instance, Suvi, how does this feedback feel for you?
Good. Also, I think how we've been working together, and also how you've been working together. I think we all who've been part have seen the beginning. Yeah, obviously you need to start to know each other, but then how much easier it gets, and how we all learn from each other. But then also adding maybe to the collaboration, also understanding the system, and how it is maybe now a bit different than what it was before, that now the private and public sector need to work a bit more together, and that could help.
Okay. Thank you, Suvi. Moving on to the next question or topic. A big part of the course and the design approach is identifying and framing areas for development by involving key actors involved. What new areas have you been able to identify or reframe during this process? Are there some new areas?
Well, yes, I think there's multiple, but perhaps, well, just to mention one, I think it was also one of point in all of these three proposals, that the user should be also taking part of providing data, and user should have the active role. And I was thinking that perhaps even that we have been thinking and promoting user-centric services, but perhaps we have forgot the user in a sense that users could be active and provide the data. It's not only the operators and agencies and government task to provide the data and say what kind of services are accessible.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to add that, I think I actually, like, after the third presentation was going on, I kind of started to draw this small, like, a sketch of like how all these three like takes on the brief kind of work together in a way in my head. So I really liked how in the first presentation the committee and this idea of having ownership and bringing the scatteredness together would be working. I know it's like you said yourself, there's been committees in the past, and I'm sure there's like things to discover, but I really think there needs to be like this ownership and and accountability of partners joining that to make it happen. And then I really enjoyed in the second presentation about this SIS, concentrated, where everyone gets information, where it's always on time. And I really nicely see it, like in the third presentation there was mention of DigiTransit, which I could see would be kind of already providing different kind of operators journey planning information, so why not also accessibility information? So I see that would be like committee looking over the SIS and the system, and then finally this task force approach of the third team. I see really like one of these like customers who are then inputting information through the task force into the SIS, which kind of then flows back and makes things together. So I really liked how they kind of all came together, in at least in my head. So yeah, overall really enjoyed all of them.
Wow, thank you. Carlotta, for instance, you work for the SIS in the SIS group. How does this sound to you?
Yes, obviously very encouraging, and it was exactly that approach that we wanted to, say with our project. And actually, while you were talking, I remembered from one of our discussions, it was mentioned that users usually, they want to get the data, but they don't feel very encouraged to provide it and think, why should I do it? And it's easier just to, get it and have it in front of me. And exactly with this approach, incentivizing the user and finding a way to make them feel that it's easy and effortless. So I think that was definitely the way to combine it all together. Obviously, the stakeholders are a big part of it, and service providers, but involving the user in that sense, making them in a way equal in providing that data is making the whole system run, hopefully.
Thank you. Moving on, now the course is ending for the students, but your work continues. What actions does the work inspire to take forward? What is happening now after this?
Well, of course, I cannot promise anything, but definitely I like that we have now 3 different aspects and like a key insights that we should work further. But like said already, there is this common points, so they are creating kind of a good one picture what we should be doing. But I think the first step is that collaboration, and we have to take together and look these outcomes and proposals and have the discussion, of course, in the organization, but also with the stakeholders, that what could be the next steps. But yeah, there is a lot of work going on relevant to the accessible travel chain, so definitely we will be using these proposals. So I hope that you will see how in future these will be implemented in one way or other, but I can't promise more at this moment.
And what about you, Laura?
Yeah, I guess not much to add, but just really looking forward to hoping to be involved in this kind of, and hoping these kind of collaborative efforts will continue and all people will come together. And Joona mentioned earlier like about this like accessibility forum that VR and HSL are starting to pilot later this year, and hoping these kind of initiatives and efforts and just parties coming together will encourage this like bigger change. And of course, looking forward to hearing from the LVM side, like how these like great presentations will be like digested and put to action.
Okay, thank you. Kaliste, what would you like to say to our partners for the future? Like something to emphasize that please consider this or something?
Yes. Well, you mentioned a lot of time the collaboration, and as well you emphasized how all of our groups were working on different topics, and that's kind of a good illustration of collaboration, because that's not a, let's say, accident. We kind of shared the work in a way that each group would cover a specific area so that it would give out more interesting results for you to have a maybe wider panel to choose from. So let's say we can be your example for collaboration in a very humble way.
Very nice, nicely put. What about Suvi or Carlotta? Do you have something still to comment to our stakeholders?
Yeah, just maybe quickly saying how wonderful it is to be collaborating so closely with you. Again, it was mentioned in the previous discussion that coming from another country, it's also coming here, it's so different, and maybe for you it's a bit normal, but for us it's always so nice to see how easily we can also talk to each other, and again, collaboration is happening. And yes, so thank you so much for that.
Maybe I ask one question here. Are you currently working on something where you have seen like even a small idea from this project that you have been able to use?
Well, currently there is a, like was mentioned, there is a lot of committees, but there is one committee for accessible travel chains, and actually Ministry is working to draft the vision for accessible travel chains. First, the idea is first to draft the vision, and then there might be measures under that, and I think these outcomes will provide great hints for those measures and perhaps pilots or something. And of course, there is this traffic data ecosystem that the FinTraffic is coordinating. So their operators are not only to data related to accessible travel chains, but all data related to transport and traffic and mobility services. So also there is kind of a new models for cooperation and data sharing. So I think there's quite many ongoing projects and development which are kind of related to these proposals. But like someone mentioned already, that perhaps we should kind of take the accessibility a bit higher on the priorities. Now it's only like one included in that all, but not like a specific topic. So that's perhaps something that we have to think also.
Okay. Maybe quickly to wrap up, we're running a bit on time, but I think, well, in general, I think all these presentations, also the first ones, which were not even on mobility sector, but were really interesting to see anyway, they kind of encourage to look at things from a new perspective and see like what are the kind of these low-hanging fruits or easy to done things. I think one of the groups said really nicely that like it doesn't have to be big, it can, like, something can be done already. And I really liked how in the group too, especially, you kind of there was the importance on feedback. So how can customers give feedback easily? Is there something we could improve on that? And then I like this kind of that information equals trust. So can we make sure that on our end, on our backyard at least, we have covered that the information is correct and it's kind of accurate. So I'm sure it is, but I'm sure there's some small things that we could improve already now.
Okay. Thank you so much for our stakeholders, and thank you for the students. And Nuria, I guess it's for you.
Just 2 more slides before we officially celebrate and close. This course ends and the next one begins. So we take the opportunity that we have our partners from this year and potential partners, who knows, for next year here, to announce that we have an open call for next year, 2024, which will be the 10th anniversary of this course. So we remind you that to participate as a partner in this course, we follow the projects need to follow certain characteristics. First, that the challenge is owned, or there's some initiative from the ministries, Finnish ministries and the public authorities. There is already a program, like you have seen today, that all the initiatives are existing, ongoing programs or challenges that are national level, and that is contemporary. We ask our partners to participate in 3 course sessions, as it was mentioned now again by Laura, that a collaboration has happened during the course. So we are an example of collaboration because our partners have been involved during class, participating in workshops, but also behind the scenes, providing information, clarifying. This participation, active participation in the course, is super important as part of mimicking the practice of cooperating between stakeholders. There is an Aalto standard fee for commission projects, and the planning starts in autumn, as the course starts later in 2024. If you're interested, please contact me. I would love to hear what challenges you have, and would love also to work together for next year. And before we close this year, we want to thank you, first of all, to our partners, because it all started many months ago, even a year ago for some of you. And the course starts with your challenge, and so we thank you for trusting us and providing your challenge, that your very important work, and trusting that we can be of help and value. Next, we'd like to thank our students, all of you, the 24 students, for your passion, for being professional and committed to everything that you have done in the classes, participating in contact teaching, but also in every single interaction you have had with every stakeholder that you have involved in the process. Many thanks. And also we'd like to thank everybody who has been involved in the course, the teaching team in the first row, Natalia, Sofia, and Zoe, that we work together very closely. And also big thanks to the production team, Aisea, Arte, the photographer, and Elias Nordstrom at the back in the video back there. We will be uploading the video presentation and also the project reports in the upcoming days on our website. Please stay tuned, more to come. So you can use everything. We use Creative Commons, so please use, reuse, advocate, and credit our students' work. Thank you very much for today. You're welcome to stay, network, exchange ideas, and I think there's a bit more coffee if you want.